Watching the multi-awarded Radio Bandido TV on channel 224 Sky Cable and TV Plus boxes. Simulcast on DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Informing, advising, and entertaining the Filipinos and OFWs around the world. Streaming live on www.facebook.com/DZRJ 8:10 a.m. or on YouTube, channel DZRJ 8:10 a.m. Radio Bandido.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJ TV. My name is Eric Lecain, and I'm joined with Lalie Tolentino, as always. Lalie Tolentino, who has just arrived in the country from Thailand. Lalie Tolentino, how was your trip to Thailand?
Pretty good, Eric. My first time to go out of the country after how many years? And it's a pretty good experience because since it's still COVID, but now I can say that we can travel already.
Yeah. I mean,
just
and I know they're getting better at it in the airport. I know when I came in the airport from the United States, it took forever to get through the airport, but I hear they've got that fixed, that things are going much better in the airport now.
Yeah, and I think, for those people who are not traveling yet, I think you better check first what are the requirements, because today we're supposed to be early. Problem is, it's also a requirement from Thailand to the Philippines to take antigen test.
Yeah.
And it takes oh my God.
I mean, speaking of a lot of Filipinos that have had to take the test, currently there's a lot of Filipinos in Hanoi. For the 2021 SEA Games, even though it's 2022, because they had to reschedule the SEA Games because of the COVID issue, so now it's 2022. But a lot of people that I have been speaking to did not even know that the SEA Games was going on right now because they've been so focused on the election, but it has been going on. And actually, the Philippines has been doing quite good.
Yes.
Very proud of them. Of course, Vietnam is in first place right now, but that's usually the case. Usually the host country is in first place. But in second place is the Philippines right now in the medal count.
Yes.
So Philippines doing quite good over there. We've talked a lot over the last year about this fella, E.J. Obinya, the pole vaulter. And he just took home a gold medal. I watched him in the gold medal jump. It looked like he was 2-3 feet above the bar.
Really?
When he finally jumped that thing. But anyway, so he was able to get it. But a whole lot of people, there's a lot of gold medals coming in from the Philippines. So it's just getting started. So they're having a really good start over there. Right now, I believe the Philippines has 60 medals in total.
Wow.
So speaking of getting over the bar, they're doing good. But one thing that happened in the Philippines last week is the Philippines got over the bar because the elections is over.
Oh, yes. Thank God it's over.
There's a new president. Of course, here on the show, in case you're tuning in for the first time, we talk about stuff going on around the world, some of the interesting issues that are going on outside the Philippines and how they relate to the Philippines. And this election has spilled out into the world news a lot over the last month, sometimes or mostly negative. But that, at least they are pushing the story of the election. Now, this is opposed to the last election 6 years ago with Duterte, where the world didn't notice so much right away. The Philippines was having an election, but then they really started noticing the president after the few months that he was in office. But this time, there's a lot of focus on the history of the Philippines, sometimes more so than the actual election. But now that it's over, people can take a deep breath because the election in the Philippines went pretty well. I thought that it looked like there were a couple of incidences, but overall, the Philippine election went off fairly well, and the world noticed that it went well. There was not any big surprises. In fact, it almost went exactly in line with what the poll numbers were saying You know, here on the show, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I said that Lalie would need to carry all of her people, plus the voters from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th place, plus 10% of the BBM people, and that was just a tie. But it looks like the final vote numbers are lining up exactly as how the polls predicted it was going to come out. Now, you know, there's been all kinds of allegations of fraud and destroying ballots and machine tampering, but honestly, every election is like this, especially elections that use the popular vote as a measuring stick across the world. Every election that I have talked about and covered, and we have covered a lot of elections on this show, there's always some allegation of fraud or machine tampering. You know, especially whoever loses, sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. That's just the way that elections go. Now, of course, there was one exception to this, and that is in 2016 in the U.S., where Donald Trump won the election and then still complained that he got cheated. But that was Donald Trump. Go figure. But in the case of the Philippines, the vote count was not particularly close. There are many articles and posts that the wide gap was done purposely, so it could be hard to contest the vote later. However, from what I have seen so far, there hasn't been much evidence of that. So the outcome of this presidential election, as of now, it seems to be pretty much decided. So if you watch the world news, which I do all the time, you know, the world is, now that the election is over, they are trying to guess, I guess, what the new president, if it's going to be a presidency of the past or a presidency of the future, a combination of the past and the future. There have been a number of articles coming out that are heavily speculating about what is going to happen to the Philippines under this new administration. So we are going to skip over all these speculations and look at some of the actual interesting things that have come out in the world news this week. Interesting story, J.P. Morgan, one of the top largest investment firms in the world, has dropped the Philippines to the bottom of the ASEAN countries it recommends to invest in, telling investors around the world that they should lessen their exposure to the Philippines because of coming inflation, the huge debt, the unclear path of the new administration. But at the same time that this news came out, so did news about the Philippines' GDP. Which we remember for a while was in negative numbers, and it has bounced back. And I know this doesn't have much to do with the election, but looking at the first quarter of 2022, it was slightly higher than economists had expected, which, depending on what angle you're looking at the GDP, that could be good news for the Philippines. And a lot of this could be because COVID has not returned to the Philippines in a huge way. Transportation, tourism, restaurants, people are buying stuff. All these things have increased, which was expected. However, it turns out that it's a little bit better than we had expected. The economists had expected in the Philippines.
Yeah. Well, I think,
I'm just saying, a lot of people are worried outside the Philippines. However, they did have this little unexpected jump in the GDP, which is pretty good news.
Yeah, and now people are having a different tune because the election is over. And if you are watching those people being interviewed, you can pick a lot of positive issues. I mean, positive things that they're talking about the Philippines. So I think we just have to concentrate and focus now on the positivity, no matter what happened to the country. Because like I said before, we are Filipinos. We are here to bounce back, and we will cooperate with anybody who will be the president because this is our country. And no matter how people from the outside look at us, I mean, we just have to worry about ourselves, not other people.
Well, I mean, I of course watch a lot of the news that's been, especially this week, I've been watching a lot of the local news. And if we get back to the election itself, a lot of people this week have talked to me about it. Why this, why that? If you just watch TV, and I would say this week I've watched more TV than I've watched in the last 6 months. The vote count's way too slow. Counting the votes is way too fast. There was 168 machine problems, disenfranchisement cases, these long lines, ballots being thrown out, weird, strange things coming up in the middle. And then you start to get words like voting anomalies, election hacking. This is what I've been seeing on television like all week. And I got to say, Lalie, if you, like me, you've been watching TV, you've seen all these things, doesn't it remind you of a story that we did here like in 2020 about the U.S. election? It almost sounds the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I went back and looked at the show that we did on the U.S. election, and some of the exact same stories are what I'm hearing now on the TV in the Philippines. Now, this election was slightly different than past Philippine elections. I guess if you've noticed, they have made some updates. And the counting, from what I understand, was a lot more automated in this election, and that came as a shock to some when they saw the outcome of the election, and that it seemed to end the second that they closed the polls. Sometimes it even looked like it kind of ended before the polls because of this update that they did. And this is very different from the elections. I've been here through 4 different presidential elections. I've been in the Philippines for 13 years now. And this led a lot of people, of course, to criticize the election itself. But the change sometimes in the way that we do elections, sometimes that's hard to swallow itself. And this is kind of what the point that I was trying to make, especially if the previous year was drastically different. The change that they made itself is meant to improve things, but actually, this issue with something here on the microphone. Hopefully it's okay now. But what I was saying was that the change that I think a lot of people saw in this election is the anomaly. That is the thing that people are criticizing. As tech improves, it makes people more suspicious. And I see that a lot, especially on the TV this week. Like I said, we don't talk a lot about local news here on this show, but this week we kind of are. But, sometimes I am surprised, Lalie, after all this time and all the technology that we have in the world, that we are having the same problems that we had years ago with voting in the Philippines, in the United States, just literally everywhere where they do these kind of things. As they try and improve it, somehow, something doesn't feel right. Something is wrong. Something doesn't look right because it's different now. And especially if you're on the losing side.
Yes.
I mean, if you're on the losing side, something feels wrong. I mean, these voting machines, we don't really even use them that much. Like, why is there always some kind of problem? And then people don't get to vote. And then there's a YouTube video, and then there's a photo at the polling stations, and then they pop up on Facebook. And now we have a reason to claim fraud and cheating, like Clinton did in 2016, like Trump did in 2020. It just continues.
Well, isn't it part of the democratic process? Everybody will criticize everybody. If you're on the losing side, of course, you will feel bad. It's for me, Eric, I look at it now like this is just a normal thing, every election. And now when I was listening to because there are questions about, well, how come now it is so fast to transmit the ballots and things like that?
It was incredibly fast.
Yeah,
like, it happened the minute it was over.
Yeah,
it was like, there's the
they explained,
answer.
The Comlec explained about it, and they said because we upgraded it already. So, even, before, when it was too slow, they complain. Now it's fast, they complain.
Well,
so
the voting is slow, but the counting is fast.
Yeah, I know, but then, you know what? They will always complain.
I want to make one point that, there was a whole big issue about the machines breaking down. I would like to point out that 168 machines were reported broken, but 107,354 worked.
Yeah.
So that's according to the newspapers here. But like I said, in the U.S., which is where I'm very familiar with our democratic process there, if one machine breaks that doesn't work, that's the biggest story. That's the biggest story of the election. Everyone's going to focus on that one machine, not the 100,000s that worked, which leads to recounts, and then how the counting was done, which leads to anomalies. And once there's one anomaly, then that leads to 2, that leads to 10, that leads to 100 different things, and then it starts to spread all that, and then there's an investigation, and then there's an investigation into the investigators. This is the way it happens over and over and over. So, in the last Philippine election, there was an investigation that lasted almost the entire term of the office. I think that investigation was 6 years long. And even the week before the election, the candidate came out, so let's make sure that they don't steal it again. And if we lose, then there's fraud for sure, which is exactly what happened in the United States. And I don't mean to be comparing the Philippines to the United States. It's just funny. I was watching a lot of this, and it just seemed to come up that the narrative, saying that some news agencies have access to the voting data, allowing them for hacking and for voting, for getting into the voting machines. And I have to say, there's a lot of this, hacking, because we keep talking about hacking. We slide it into people's minds. We slide it into people's minds before the election, and that's what happened in this election. They slid it into people's minds. In the United States, they investigated voter hacking, voter machine hacking. They spent millions of dollars on that. You know what? It's hard to hack a voting machine. It's really hard. Turns out it's literally almost impossible. It's much easier to spend money on fake Facebook posts than it is to try and change the voting tallies in a machine. Mm-hmm. But yet we still believe that someone is hacking our system. And sometimes I have to say, I'm surprised a little bit in the day and the age that we are lived in, that we can't develop a simple system to vote, and that makes it easier. I'm not just the Philippines. I'm talking about the U.S. I'm talking everywhere that does elections like this. It doesn't do parliamentary elections, that we do the popular vote. That you can make a system where everyone gets to vote. You don't have to go back to the province to vote. You don't have to wait 5 hours in line. You don't have a card that you have to put in the machine that can be swapped out right before you vote, which is the big issue that I saw coming up. Where there's not some large man there watching, who your candidate is or who you're marketing. A very way to make a peaceful vote. So I'm just saying, Lalie, I know it's a little bit. I've come up with some ideas.
What? What is your idea? Tell me.
This is how we should vote in the future. All right, so the first one, here's what I think. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google Trends, Netflix, they all use their algorithms, don't they? They look up everyone's clicks, they know everyone's tendencies, they know who you know, they know who your friends are, what you want to buy, what TV shows they watch, what TV shows you watch. I bet they also know who you're going to vote for. Why don't we just let Facebook and YouTube and Google Trends and Netflix pick our presidents? Just an idea.
Yeah,
because they know who everybody's going to vote for. They know who you're going to vote for, whether you vote or not. I mean, whether you're able to go to the province or not, they know who you're going to vote for. Why don't we just let them?
All right, don't let the technology, middle in our election.
I got another idea. What do you think of this? Elon Musk has this idea of putting microchips in everybody's head, and they can tell you what they want. So if you have an election right at the moment, why don't you just close your eyes and concentrate on who you want to vote for, and your brave Wayne send it to a system, and we know right away who everybody wants to vote for.
Oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen if that would be the future.
No more standing in the hot sun. No more going back to the province.
I know. I mean, but that's what we want. And you will not believe this, Eric. When I went to vote last Monday, I went there at 6:30 in the morning, and you will not believe this. I mean, I was like, wow, there's a lot of people already. They woke up so early to vote. I mean, now and then you're gonna take that away from the Filipinos. I don't know about the other nationalities, other nation, but for us, hey, that is an exciting part of our democracy.
I just keep thinking that I could hear an announcement in the mall. Okay, everybody concentrate on who you want to vote for right now. Everybody close their eyes. Okay, let's vote for in the United States, they had this great idea. They would say, put Donald Trump and Joe Biden in a pit of mud and just let them fight it out. I guess you couldn't do that here because Manny Pacquiao would probably knock everybody out.
Yeah.
By the way, Manny Pacquiao came in third place. I know that was. Yes. I kept saying, "Oh, we love Manny Pacquiao." Manny Pacquiao came in. The hero of the people got third in the presidential election.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
speaking of heroes, we have to get off this subject because we have limited time here. Let's move to a hero in another country really quick. The leader of the country, who is the hero to the people, because, Lalie Tolentino, if you do not say he is the hero, you will go to jail. And that would be Russia. So, Russia, as you know, is in a war in the Ukraine. Still probably the biggest story in the news. But there was something that happened last week that was very interesting. And I wanted to get to this week because it was just so fascinating. And it goes along with the story at the beginning about technology. So for the past few weeks, we have been talking about the Russian misinformation, Putin's obsession with changing the history of Russia, the illegality of the press being critical to him, that if anyone on TV were to speak out critically about the war in the Ukraine, they would be arrested. So for the most part, the people of Russia believe everything is going well in the Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians are happy that the Russians are there to save them. Everything is going wonderfully with the war, according to Russian television. Well, Russia awoke a day last week to something really weird on their TV. It was the same day as the live broadcast of Putin's Victory Day parade, in which he gives a big speech, and then they show off all the military. They do one of those big parades that you see. But something very unexpected happened. When you turned on your Russian TV to the screen, if you go to pick a show that you want to watch, every show was exactly the same. They all had the same name, the same title of every single show on your cable that you go into if you want to pick your show. And what that title was, it said, "On your hands is the blood of thousands of Ukrainians and hundreds of murdered children. The TV and the authorities are lying. No to war." Someone hacked the 3 largest state cable networks in Russia.
Oh my God, really?
Every single button of every single station had those exact words on it. So right after, they were able to finally get it off the TV, but they got it off the TV just before Putin gave his big speech. So, and his big speech, by the way, was how the conflict in Ukraine is like taking down Adolf Hitler in World War II. It's basically the same speech that he always gives about whatever. The country's being run by Nazis, that NATO is weaponizing the territories on the Russian border, that the war is actually a preemptive strike against U.S. aggression on Russia. But the fact that just before Putin's speech, the television network was hacked. Huge embarrassment to Russia. And by the way, that is not all that happened. Someone hacked the Lalie news agency website. Now, Lalie is one of the largest, I've read this, I've taken a look at this website a couple times. It is the largest pro-Putin media outlet in Russia. So, there's no independent news outlets in Russia anymore. If you're writing anything against Putin, the crime is punishable by 15 years in prison. So when you went to the Lalie website, someone swapped out all the stories on the site with other stories.
Oh my Lord.
We're going to get some tape. This is how we do it in the Philippines. We just use duct tape. So anyway, now that we got our duct tape here, they swapped out the actual stories that were on the site with these other stories. And one of those stories read, I love this. Vladimir Putin has lied. As we take off the tape and put the tape back on, what else did it say? Putin must go. He has unleashed a senseless war and is leading the Russians into the abyss. He said, one of the captions was, "Russia is leaving the corpses of soldiers in the Ukraine. Putin despises the law." Putin unleashed one of the bloodiest wars of the 21st century. Record spending on the army did not help the Russians defeat the Ukrainians.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it goes, but the big one was Zelensky turns out to be cooler than Putin. Oh, snap. So anyway, if you clicked on any of these things on the biggest site, it would take you to an actual article. And the article, I mean, I could read some of these articles, and they are scathing. Just to finish up with this thing, an interesting thing, there was a note at the bottom that read, if you want to read these articles, these true articles, they will not be here very long. You need to screenshot them because they're all going to be taken down soon. And they were.
Oh.
Of course, they took them down very soon. But as it turns out, this newspaper was not actually hacked. It was two young people who worked there. And they had passwords to go in and change all the stories. So they posted all these stories, and then you know what they did?
What?
They fled Russia.
Oh.
They posted it, and they posted another thing on the web that said they are now looking for work, lawyers, and political asylum.
Okay.
So hopefully, people can hear me talk because I'm really loud. But they signed off. They signed off with one interesting thing that they said: "Do not be afraid. Do not be silent. Resist. You are not alone."
Wow. We'll just switch it because you talk too much. I think you better use this one.
I don't know. We're constantly swatching around microphones here. So anyway, I just like to say that was very brave of these young people that risked their lives to speak out against the Russian war, which is currently killing a lot of people. So I hope that the people out there could hear that, because that was a very interesting story. It was a very fascinating story that came out of Russia this week, that the television was hacked and the newspaper was hacked. But speaking of hacking things, we need to hack our way over to questions so we can get a couple of questions answered this week from our viewing audience, Lalie Tolentino.
All right. Let's see. The first question from Rosie of Manila is, all right, the first positive COVID case in North Korea. Why just now?
All right. This is interesting, huh? The first positive case of North Korea. Now, doesn't it seem impossible that a country in the world would not have the COVID virus? That just doesn't seem possible to me. But as of 2022, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Tonga, and North Korea had not had a single case of COVID. And supposedly, Turkmenistan banned the word COVID virus. So they have not had any episodes of COVID in their country, because you cannot say the word COVID in that country without going to jail. We've talked about Turkmenistan and the crazy government that's going on there. Tonga had finally had their first in January, but now North Korea, they got their first episode of COVID this past week. Supposedly in North Korea before, that if they found out that you have COVID, they would shoot you on the spot and burn your body right where it fell. I don't know if that is true, but that is some of the things that they would say. But right now, they have had their first case of COVID. They said that 187 people were experiencing a fever. But how do we know this? We have to take their word for it. But as of today, coming out of Korea, supposedly there's 350,000 people sick and 48 people have died. And this all happened in a matter of days. So, Lalie, in North Korea, health is pretty bad anyway. They don't have any good testing programs. They do not have any vaccines. So you have 25 million malnourished people and no one has been vaccinated. So now they have COVID now, and it is spreading throughout the country. And Kim Jong-un wants to keep his people working. People are still going to work. They have shut down some of the markets, but commerce is still happening. And they're worried that Kim Jong-un is not going to ask for help. Now, the South Koreans have offered it. They said, we have vaccines. If you want it, we will give them to you. So we have to see how far this is going to go. If the North Koreans will continue to let the Omicron, which is in their country now, spread all over the place, or they will accept vaccines from the West and vaccinate their people.
I think we need to talk to him so we can give him some vaccines.
Kim Jong-un, if you would like to come on the World News Jam here at DZRJ, you are invited.
Let's go to Ingrid of Las Piñas. How would you react seeing Russian soldier killed two Ukrainian civilian in the news just like a dog?
So the question was, how do you react to those Ukrainian soldiers who killed a civilian? And you're right, Lalie Tolentino, when you say like a dog. This is what war looks like. In war, there are certain rules, and people are supposed to follow those rules. But as we have seen in this war, and many other wars sometimes, people don't follow the rules. These rules that were decided in some committee meeting, in some boardroom years before, I mean, who's going to referee and make sure that everyone does what they're supposed to do and everyone follows the rules? Especially in a war where one side is trying to take over an entire country. Who's there to explain the rules of engagement to a Russian soldier number 2033? So, when you're explaining the rules, no eye poking, no biting, no kicking, no, hitting in the groin. But, you're free to kill other soldiers. However, you are not supposed to, in engaging in war, kill civilians, rape women, steal property, shoot children. You can't do that because that's a war crime. And, as far as we know, this has not been explained very clearly to the Russian soldiers. Anyway, just to get to a couple of Russian soldiers were trying to break into a car dealership and steal stuff. They've been doing it all over the Ukraine. And the owner came outside to confront them. And then a guard came out with the owner of the dealership, and they came out and they talked to the soldiers, asked them what they wanted. The Russian soldiers, they frisked them, and then they let them go. And as they were walking away, the Russians were like, you know what, we changed our mind. And they shot them in the back. And then they broke in and they started stealing stuff. It was all caught on CCTV cameras all over the dealership, watching them go, pulling out whiskey and drinking it and looking for things to steal. That's the rule. Nobody's there. The man crawled away. The man who was shot in the back, he crawled away and into an office and he died. He bled to death because they couldn't get to him. He's talking to people on the phone saying, hey, these Russians are here just stealing stuff. They know they shot us in the back.
Wow. That's why, it's not.
This is war.
Yeah. In war, I don't know how to explain
I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. I don't have a good answer for that question, except this is the way the war is going.
Yeah, just avoid war. That's all I can say.
Listen to Lalie Tolentino.
All right, let's go to Manny Pasay. Who is the journalist killed in the middle of the coverage?
This is one of those raids in the West Bank, that place that divides the Israelis from the Palestinians. Israeli forces were there. They were armed to the hilt. They rushed in to get the Palestinian terrorists, as they call them. And covering the story was Shari Akhled, who is a Palestinian-American journalist. She has 30 years experience. She was working for Al Jazeera at the time. She was completely covered in body armor. Her helmet was marked with press. Her back had press on it. And they started shooting, and somehow a bullet made it right into her face. And she died instantly. So the Israeli military said, oh, well, it must have been a bunch of Palestinians that shot it. But as things are starting to unfold, it seems that maybe she was not only shot by the Israeli forces, but they suspect that she may have been the target of the Israeli forces. Just to put this in perspective, 45 journalists have been killed by Israeli forces since 2000. 2014, there were 17 journalists killed alone. Wow. So Al Jazeera has called on media and human rights institutions to join forces to hold the Israeli government accountable for this. That woman was very famous. I've seen this woman multiple times on Al Jazeera because I watch a lot of Al Jazeera, and the management is saying this was a blatant murder, an intentional target. And the Israelis violated international law by assassinating a journalist in cold blood. We're still waiting for the investigation, but Israel will be investigating themselves. So a lot of people are like, is it going to be a fair investigation?
Maybe not. I don't know, but then let's move forward. I don't want to hear that anymore, Eric.
Goodness.
All right, let's go to Mon for Parañaque. What can you say about Elon Musk wants Donald Trump should be back in Twitter?
All right. Well, okay. Yeah. So Elon Musk has gotten what he wanted. He wants everyone to pay attention to him. And that's what's happening. Everyone is paying attention to him, whether he bought or it looks like semi-bought Twitter. He made a lifetime ban of Donald Trump on Twitter. As he announced it, Trump has continually pushed the envelope on Twitter until they finally banned him, giving out false information on the coronavirus, which was dangerous to people, on to, creating a violent situation in which people brought an attack on the Capitol of the White House. So these are just crumbs to this big sandwich that is going to happen, where Trump is going to make a comeback and Elon Musk is going to help him. Trump, who loves to make those toilet tweets, he loves sitting there. But anyway, so that's what seems to be coming back, what we have to look forward to on Twitter.
Okay. Do you still have your account in Twitter, Eric?
Yes, I do. I'm waiting for Donald Trump to come back.
Oh my God, your favorite
so
guy.
I can ignore his tweets yet again.
That's good. All right, let's go to Joe of Makati. President Biden mourned and says irreplaceable losses in U.S. reach 1 million COVID deaths. How sad. What's your comment on that?
Yeah, Biden this week, he mourned the irreplaceable losses of the U.S. as it reached 1 million dead. Lalie, I remember sitting in my house in the U.S. because I got stuck there visiting my mom and I could not come back to the Philippines. And I just watched TV day after day. There was nothing really else to do. The stores were all closed, no restaurants. There was nothing for you to do. So I watched TV, and it would say that the virus is getting much, much worse, that there were going to be 100,000 deaths. Mm-hmm. And it was unimaginable. How could there be 100,000 deaths? And then later, maybe there's going to be 200,000. And that was just crazy talk. It was like, oh, God, that's just insane. Never in anybody's mind to think there would be 1 million deaths in one country, especially in the United States. I mean, when you read the history books, where do you see that? The Black Plague, things from a long time ago that it just didn't seem conceivable that 1 million people would die. And I have to say, a lot of these people died during the time when the United States had a vaccine that was 99.9% effective. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people died. And so I have to say, yes, 1 million people died in the United States. It's very sad. A lot of those people died from stupidity. And not necessarily all the people that died were the stupid ones. I have to say, I have to put a little bit of blame on the politicians there. We watched our leaders in our country, in the U.S., tell us that you don't need masks and you don't need a vaccine, and you don't need to stay home. And the evil healthcare professionals, what they're telling you to do, we shouldn't trust those people anymore. And that's what the U.S. was doing. The U.S. and around the world, COVID became a political tool. And we lost touch with reality. Yeah. And then multiple people died per minute. They were able to say one time, okay, 5 people died just now in the time that we were just talking. So, yes, we go, Joe Biden came out and said 1 million deaths, 1 million empty chairs around the family dinner table, each irreplaceable losses. Our heart goes out to all those struggling, asking themselves, how do we go on? Mm-hmm. And I have to say, the fact that 1 million people died, and most of that reason that those many people died was because of stupidity.
Yeah. We talk about a lot of that, Eric, before, and I was always teasing you why the U.S. are not listening to this. The Americans. Because they argue a lot. Because I think during the time, because of your president, because I believe that if the leader would start saying, hey guys, we better believe COVID is real. But the problem, he started it by saying,
it's not real. That's what it started out.
It's not real. That's why. And
just an isolated case.
Exactly.
It's not that
so
bad.
A lot of people in the U.S. that I know, even up to now, they don't believe in vaccine. And look at the result.
I know. And look at the result.
Yeah.
1 million deaths.
Exactly.
The richest country in the world has the most deaths of any country.
Exactly. So America doesn't want to leave that number one place in everything. And now it confirms that you have 1 million cases of,
It's
death.
hard to believe.
Yeah, I cannot.
It's hard
I feel so
to believe.
Yeah, because I have friends who died of COVID in America.
I know a lot of people that died.
Yeah.
So I that's one of the things when I see that number, I just have to say, that is something that I believe could have incredibly well been avoided. And because of politics in the world now, a lot of people died for literally no reason.
Yeah.
So that is the end of that.
Okay. I don't want to. Well, we still have COVID anyway, so what can we do?
I know.
Anyway, okay, let's move to our local news here. Let's go to Mila, but she's from California. Presumptive President-elect Bongbong Marcos get already congratulatory call and messages from the leaders of the world, including President Biden and China and others. Isn't it time for Filipinos to unite and move forward to support the incoming leader of the country?
All right. Well, here's something. Okay, yes, a lot of foreign leaders congratulating the new president. There was one great one flying around about the Queen of England wearing the lavish red dress and telling the president she's so happy that his family is back in power. That was fake. Yes,
I
the
know.
Queen.
I can see that it's fake.
The Queen did not say that is not even her job. That is the job of the Prime Minister. However, the United States president called the Philippine president-elect. That was very real. And during that call, he told the presumptive president that he hopes for a continuation of close ties to the United States, strengthening of their alliances. He included words like the fight against COVID, climate change, promoting economic growth in the Philippines, and respecting human rights. So BBM invited him to the inauguration. Biden politely turned him down. Biden is a little bit busy right now in the United States.
Yes, a lot of problem
the
there.
United States economy is falling off a cliff. So, but it's possible that another U.S. delegation may come. On the flip side, the Chinese ambassador came in person to congratulate the new president. The Chinese ambassador gave Marcos a letter from President Xi himself, hoping for the same thing: closer ties, relationship becoming stronger, benefits to the people. Bongbong has stated he wants to continue the same policies of Duterte in regards to China and the South China Sea. The South China Sea is being a very contentious issue in the Philippines because China has continued to stand off with Filipino ships every other week. We have to talk about that here on the show. So many around the world are going to be watching this particular relationship because it's the balance of the shaky relationship with its old friend, the United States, and the current shaky relationship with its recent new friend, China. And how is that going to play out?
Yeah. And, I think all the leaders, anybody would do that. Because this should be there is a diplomatic way to say things to whoever. And that's a good, for me, the way I look at it, it's very positive. So why not?
There's a lot of things coming up. Taiwan, China. That's bubbling up. That'll probably bubble in the next 6 years. Japan, they sent a congratulatory letter to their.
Yes.
Japan is an important economic partner of the Philippines. However, they are very anti-China. So how is that? How is that role going to play out?
Of course, we have to look at it. Of course, the whole world will be watching how the president-elect would be. How he is going to handle it. But then we just have to wait and see and give these people a chance. And I hope it will, boils down to peace, not, creating enemies. Because, like, what I heard that part when Bongbong Marcos says, we are a very small country because if the U.S. and China sneeze, we will be like. Because we believe
the Philippines is very small, but the Philippines is very important. It's strategically loaded in a really kind of an odd place in the world.
Exactly.
And we're not only talking about issues of peace and war, but the economics between the Philippines and the EU that has come up. The pipeline between the Philippines and India, between the Philippines and Russia. Bongbong Marcos has already said he's not going to pick sides in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, and a lot of people said, that's not such a good idea because it's going to be one way or the other. But, the Philippines is, like I said, it is not a big country. It is not a rich country, but it is a very important country.
Yes, that's why.
To a lot of things.
Yeah, and even Vladimir Putin sent his congratulatory already to Bongbong Marcos. He did already.
So.
I mean, all of them. I mean, all the. Isn't it funny? The U.S., the China, Russia, Japan, all these countries. For me, I mean, maybe they see something, and why not? Well, we want peace in this world. We don't want to have war with anybody. Let's make friends with everybody. And how you gonna handle it? Well, we have to wait and see.
Yeah. So,
okay.
There you go.
Yeah. All right.
Everybody's looking at the Philippines.
All right, Mila, that is our response to your question here. Now, let's go to Jim Ortigas. This is very direct to us, Eric. Eric and Lalie, maybe time to tell your friends who voted for Lenny to move forward. Respect the voice of more than 31 million Filipinos. And your program should also speak good of the man. Good luck to our president-elect and Filipinos. God bless the Philippines. Wow. First time that I heard from our viewer, say something like this. I mean, maybe we have some influence to our viewers. That's why,
All right. Here's what, the Philippines is a wonderful country. I've lived here for a quarter of my life for a reason. And I have seen 4 presidents get elected now. I'm a advocator of democracy because I'm an American. Good or bad, that's our thing, democracy. But a democracy is more than just voting for your leaders. It's also independent thought and free speech. Now, I know there are limits to that. In the U.S. last year, we had an election and half the country's candidates didn't win, and some of those people decided the best way to settle things was to storm the Capitol and kill the leaders they didn't like. That was in a country that's supposed to be the symbol of democracy. Even democracy has its ups and downs. Trying to kill your leaders because you don't like them is not really a democracy. But standing up to them and voicing your opinion, voting against them because you think they are wrong, that is democracy. If you want to stand up in front of the DOJ on Padre Faro Street in the hot weather with your sign that says, I hate the government, if you're a journalist and wants to write an opinionated story about how bad your president's decisions are, if you're a politician that speaks out against the corruption in the government, that's democracy. That's what makes your country great. Now, Lalie, here on the show, I'm not going to speak out against President Duterte. I never have. When he's in the world news, I have, criticized him on the South China Sea and praised him on his domestic policies, especially the ones that help the poor. I don't think foreigners, even if you're residents, should personally criticize the president. We have that right. Me personally, I don't think we should do it. Now, I didn't support a candidate in this election, which can be confusing because if you're listening to me trying to present facts about the candidates, about what the foreign press is saying, it looks, as I'm trying to present the facts, it looks like I might be speaking out against someone, but I am not. I'm basically giving facts to our listeners. And I won't speak out against the current president. But if he's in the international news, I'm going to talk about it because that's what we do. That's what we do here on this show. And if I think the press is being unfair, like a couple times I thought they were unfair with Duterte, I will say it. That's why you watch our show. We want the Philippines to know the facts, and we want them to know what's going on outside our country, even if it may put your politician in a negative light. Now, really quick, one thing that I won't do is tell you who to vote for. And I won't tell you who to support, and I won't tell you who to get in line behind. Just like with the U.S. President, Trump, when he lost, I did not tell people, you know what, you need to support Joe Biden now. Because if I had said that to Trump people, they would have punched me in the face. Have you ever met a Trump supporter? They would punch me in the face. So I'm not going to tell people that because your candidate lost, you need to unify, you need to stand in line behind them, you need to give up your ideals, you need to give up everything you believe in, even give up your memories. In multiple times in history in the Philippines has fought so hard for its right to disagree with its leaders. Now, sometimes that disagreement is not with the majority, but that's why the world invented democracy. If you don't like your leader, you can yell it from the mountain how much you don't like them, and then you can vote. This is why the Philippines is no longer run by an imperialistic foreign entity. That's why they're no longer run by an authoritarian dictator. The fact that the minority is free to speak out before and after an election is what makes the Philippines great and what sets them apart from so many other countries.
Okay. What?
I had to say that because, like I said, if, let's just say, because Lalie, we know, you tend to lean toward Bong Marcos. If Lenny had have won, and I sat here and said, you need to stand behind her, if I said that to any of the Bong, their heads would explode. I think that's what makes this country great, is that you can speak your mind, even if you don't agree with it. And I don't think, especially me, being a foreigner, I'm not going to tell people you have to get in line behind this person, you have to unify that person. No, you have to do whatever your mind says. If you want to change that, vote.
Yeah. And that's why we are all, we were all encouraged to vote, because that's the only way that
and you did.
can.
It was a big turnout.
Yeah.
It was a great election.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why even the first time when the State Department says that they saw how it went. I mean, they watched the election.
Yeah.
So it went well, and even went with international, law or something like that.
Yes, yeah, they did. They came out with that statement.
So now, okay, I'm a Filipino. I know you're an American, and you don't vote. And this is what I can say. I have discussion from different people. I mean, who they voted, and not an arguments with them. But then, the good thing that we have Filipinos are like this. For those people who are, maybe I can say, open-minded people, very good to hear and very nice really to hear that when they say, yeah, okay, it's over, time to move forward, we cannot do anything about it anymore, maybe they're referring to Lenny, maybe she can try next time. That's how it is, right? We cannot be going to the street to protest because you lose, because they always say if you lose in that election, you are cheated. Everybody say that. Now we just have to do what we have to do, especially us Filipinos, and we are basically, Filipinos are good people. We're easy. All right, we're easy. Like, okay, Eric, if you're Filipino, I said, Eric, just don't do that, we'll just probably do this one. I said, yeah, okay, sure, we'll go ahead.
The
let's
Philippines
do
is
it.
Easy. Anyway.
Well, at some point,
I'm just being silly.
Yeah, well, we are like I'm easy, but I'm not cheap. That's
that's gonna say. I knew that was coming out. I put my foot right into that mud pit.
Yeah.
But it's true what you're saying. I mean, the one thing that I was saying is that because I have to say I have a lot of friends in the Philippines. I have a lot of Filipino friends in the United States, and I have a lot of Filipinos all over the world. I love this country. So my friends are pretty much split right down the middle. I don't have a lot of Pacquiao supporter friends or Lacain supporter friends. Literally, you're either Lenny or you're Bong. I mean, literally, it's almost 50-50. The people from the losing side are not going to support the president.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell them to, because, in my opinion, that's what democracy is. Yeah, over the next 6 years, you yell as much as you want, and then at the end of 6 years, you vote.
Yeah.
If you don't like, but who knows, maybe in the middle of the 6 years, you'll change your mind, and things will start going well. Maybe things will go horrible, and the people from the winning side will go, oh my God, this is crazy, we should never vote for this guy, let's move over to this side. Who knows? But you're free to make that decision.
Exactly. That's why we can do that. And then, for those people who keep on complaining that they don't like the president and blah blah blah. But the problem is they did not vote. So
yeah, you have nobody to blame but yourself on that.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people that didn't vote because it was hard for them to vote because they couldn't go back to the province. I understand that. But speaking of going back to the province, we need to go back home, Lalie, because we are out of time. So for me, Eric Lecain, and Lalie Tolentino here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJ TV. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Join us next Sunday here at 7 o'clock right here on DZRJ, and we will be here then. Everybody, please take care out there. We'll see you next week.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.
If you like listening to this station, DZRJ 810 AM, there's no excuse not to listen anywhere and wherever you want. Listen on your phone or computer anytime, anywhere in the world. Just download